So let's say you have a character you really like and you want more art of them, maybe through buying art from freelance artists, scouring the internet for artists to do art requests, or you just want to draw them yourself for your own personal entertainment. A lot of people will usually ask you for a reference sheet, and it might be ambiguous as to what this should look like, especially because a lot of artists draw their references differently. So I'm gonna go over to the best of my ability what a good reference sheet might look like. I'm basing this off of my experiences of reference sheets that have given me a hard time when I tried to work off of them, and what some of the other fellows in my Discord server said they didn't like, and what I've seen other freelance artists ask for in their terms of service and such for their clients to provide them with. Obviously there are quite a few ways to do these, and it really depends on what you need them for, so that's something to keep in mind. 1. Do not shade your reference sheet. You'll hear this everywhere. If you ask any artist what they hate about reference images, there is a good chance this is what you're gonna hear. The purpose of a reference sheet is to show a character's design. When you shade them, the artist has to interpret what is shading and what are actual design features. It can be really confusing to distinguish this sometimes when a reference sheet is rendered or shaded. Also, it makes color picking kind of difficult for the artist to do, especially if you're soft shading or using some sort of paint-like brush. When someone gives me a rendered image, it gives me such a headache because I have to sit there like, the side legs in this art are darker than the front legs. I don't know if that's part of the design or if that's shading, and no matter what I do, there's a possibility I'm representing this character incorrectly. Shading a reference sheet can confuse your artist and make your character's design ambiguous. Don't shade them. 2. Use simple poses that don't cover up design features. A T-pose works perfectly fine for a reference sheet. Not that you have to use that specific pose, but just try not to make your pose too crazy to the point where markings are hidden under other limbs. When a pose is awkward in the reference sheet, it can be really confusing to the artist, especially if you position arms and legs super awkwardly. I think it's fine to use more stylized poses so long as you're carefully considering how they can be misinterpreted and making sure you check that no important design features are left out because of the pose of the character. 3. Use a combination of text and visuals. It's important to label your reference sheets with what's happening in them, especially if there are small things about your design that you want to communicate to the artist. If, I don't know, the color of your character's eyes change based on certain emotions, for example, you should probably label that, because a random artist won't know that about your character, and they're probably just gonna draw what's on the reference sheet. Even if you think something's really clear, I'd still label it just in case. I've had to draw multiple characters where I got confused because I didn't even know what certain accessories were. Something I want to change about my character's reference sheet when I decide it's time to remake it is that I want to include a labeled close-up of his eye. In most of the art of him, people forget these little blue-green semicircles under his eye, and while it's disappointing to me, it's also a very small thing that can easily be missed or mistaken for a line art or eye bags or something. If there are tiny design traits like this that are important to you but might be overlooked by someone who has never drawn your character, it might be a good idea to use labels or close-ups to point these things out. I know I personally love detailed reference sheets that are very clearly labeled. 4. This one is kind of specific, but don't use lossy image formats. Stop using JPEGs. There is no reason to use a JPEG anymore. It's 2023, we don't need JPEGs anymore. Use PNGs to export your ref. If you've never heard the terms lossy and lossless, a basic explanation is that lossy image formats lose information as they are reshared. So when you send the image around the internet, it gets super compressed and degraded to the point where it is extremely annoying for the artist to use. What it looked like for you when you sent it to the artist might not be the same quality as what the artist is working off of. Please use PNGs. 5. Limit the complexity of your background. Backgrounds that have too many patterns or too much stuff going on can sometimes kind of confuse your artist. It's a good idea to just leave your background transparent or solid color, or at least to have a transparent version of your reference sheet that you send to artists. That's another thing I would want to add to my OC's remade sheet. I want to give him a transparent background version. When I draw a character for a commission, I only need certain information depending on how much of the character I'm drawing and what the pose will be. If I'm only drawing them from the neck up, I usually move out the other stuff that I don't need for that drawing, so the reference sheet takes up less space on the canvas. This is a lot easier for me to do with a transparent background. Again, the point of a reference sheet is to show the character's design, not necessarily to look as aesthetic as possible. If things like backgrounds can be sacrificed for ease of usage, you should probably consider doing so. Oh my god, my throat is so dry. 6. Include at least one full body of your character. I think the minimum you could put on a reference sheet is a full body shot of your character, including all their limbs. Don't cut off the character, meaning don't just draw the thighs up. If you're not so good at drawing hands or feet, I promise you artists don't care about the quality of the drawing as long as they can see the design, and it'll give them much more of a hard time if half the character isn't included in the reference than if some parts of the art are a little goofy looking. 7. Make sure the design is consistent within the whole sheet. This is something I see surprisingly often, where the reference sheet has like 4 drawings of the character, but they're all slightly different. Now, in my case, my character's design is pretty flexible, but I made sure to specify that some things are able to be drawn a different way if the artist wanted to. This is, again, why labels are so important, because even if you do something like change up the character's hairstyle in 2 different drawings of them, it gets confusing to the artist which they're supposed to draw. If you do things like remove certain limbs for the purpose of showing aspects of the design, make sure this is specified, or else the artist may genuinely assume the character just doesn't have arms. And that isn't their fault, because a huge thing with original characters is, well, originality. And characters without arms do exist, and the artist is drawing what they see on the reference because that's what they're being paid to do. For a quick example, here's a reference I made for one of my characters. I included 2 additional drawings where he was missing his hair, wings, and accessories, so that I could show what the design looked like underneath them. I made sure to specify with text that they were meant to be pattern references. If I didn't include this, an artist might assume that his accessories and hair are optional parts of his design, which they aren't. Don't draw him bald. 8. Include a palette with all the colors in your character. It goes a long way to add a little color palette somewhere in your reference sheet. This way an artist doesn't have to struggle to get colors in hard to pick places. If your character has like more than 10 main colors or so, especially if you have multiple colors that are really similar, it also helps to specify which colors are used in which places, like sectioning your palette for accessories, fur colors, eyes, or whatever. If you have a lot of similar colors, it's important to distinguish to the artist which are used where and that they're different colors, because an artist might just assume that the golden eyes and the golden accessories are the same color gold, so it really helps to be specific about the fact that they're different colors if that is something that's important to you. 9. Include as many design specifications as possible. Since it's a reference sheet, if you wanted to make the best one ever, it helps to think about every little thing that an artist might need to know if they're drawing your character. Obviously, it's a lot to actually include all these things, so you could pick which ones sound the most important to you, but if you wanted to make the most in-depth sheet ever, it helps to include those little things. Including, but not limited to, tongue color, inner mouth color, inner ear color, which is more for furry or monster OCs specifically, paw bean color, or alternatively, palm color, any optional accessories or props you'd like them to possibly be drawn with, front, back, and side view, though this is more important for people buying 3D models or fursuits. I could be forgetting some, but those were the first that popped into my head. It also helps to label what species your character is on the ref, because this is important to a lot of artists who lean towards a more realistic looking style or just want to represent your character as accurately as possible. So that's all I had to say on this topic. If there's anything I missed, you can share your thoughts in the comments. Obviously, it's just a bit unrealistic for every single one of these things to be met in one reference sheet, and would take a long time to make a reference sheet that looks like this. But it's good to keep these things in mind if you're not sure what your reference sheet should look like. These aren't requirements for most commissioners, including myself, so it's okay if you don't do these things. It doesn't mean your reference sheets are bad or that your commissioner will hate you or something. These are just ways to make your commissioner happier. Hi, yep, end card time. Hi, what's up? I hope it doesn't feel like I'm repeating content or anything, since I know I made a video on how to commission artists, but I feel like reference sheets are a specific enough thing that could use its own video, honestly. And when I started to think about it, I realized I had a lot I could input. My air conditioner just turned on. Can you hear that? I'm sorry. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.